because you're engaged. I look at a Bob Ross. So it's all around the room. We can solve so many issues just by the power and the will of this room. And so I won't talk for long, but I wanted to speak a bit about a few issues that I thought I would raise with you. I want to thank Mr. Bryant. I know he spoke about legislation, and I wanted to talk with you about a few bills that I would like for you to support. I don't think I have to tell you that our families are in crisis. And the way that we know that is as we have seen violence, overall violence in Prince George's County over the last 5 years decline. What we have seen instead is violence in our families. We've been able to focus more intensely on the violence that exists in our families as we watch the rest of the crime decline. And the family violence that we have seen, most often when we talk about family violence, people think of intimacy. That we're talking about just domestic violence between men and women. But I have to tell you that I have stayed up at night because we have seen not only men and women who have been killed, but these babies who have been slaughtered in our communities. Over the last 2 years alone, we have had 12 children in Prince George's County who have been murdered. 12. And I continue to ask myself, what civilized community rests peacefully when children can be killed among us? And so we have to do more. We have a very sacred obligation to our children to ensure that they are at the very least safe in our community. I believe that is all of our collective obligation. We think about Nashante Davis and her baby Chloe, who were recently killed. 2-year-old Chloe who can be executed in a car seat. What kind of place are we living in? And so there are some bills in Annapolis that I think will give us the opportunity to better protect our children. One of those bills is House Bill 825. That is House Bill 825. This bill remains in the House. I testified on this bill last Thursday. It is not yet passed. It was there last year as well. And if it passes, what it would require is for medical and educational professionals to report threats of violence against children. I tell you the reason that this is important. We had a case involving a woman named Sonia Spoon. Her case has not been yet adjudicated, but Sonia Spoon is a person who was hospitalized for mental health reasons. Her mother took her to the hospital, and while she was there, she made some statements to the medical personnel that she intended to kill herself and kill her children. She made this threat in 3 different facilities, 2 hospitals and 2 police, and she was there, and these threats were not reported to Child Protective Services or any other law enforcement official. And shortly, when she was released, she allegedly went home and put bags over her 1- and 3-year-old children's heads, tied it, and killed her 2 babies just as she had threatened. And that threat was not allowed to be reported to anyone in law enforcement or in Child Protective Services who could have gone and taken care of these children. And so in that case, we took care of the mother by getting her the medical help that she needed, and we forgot to go home and make sure that those babies were safe, and she killed them. And so this bill would allow for threats. As it stands now, the law allows that if there is actual harm to a child, and that comes to the attention of a medical person in a medical facility or an educational facility, then you are required to report that. If it is merely a threat of violence against the child, there is no legal requirement on the part of medical officials or educational personnel to report that. And we want to make sure that we close that gaping loophole that allows you to make a threat against a child or to have activities that threatens a child's safety and go free. So that is House Bill 825. I have no idea why it has not passed at this point. I think to the point that Mr. Bryant made, it is quite frustrating at times, I have to be honest with you. To sit in Annapolis and watch one after the other come and discuss these bills that to us seem very much like common sense. And this one, again, allows us to protect children. And as I'm saying, we don't have any time to waste. We have to get dead serious about taking care of our children. I think this allows us to do more of that. House Bill 1371 is also a bill that we really believe is very important. There are a couple of bills that I'm going to talk about all around family violence. House Bill 1371 deals with strangulation. This is another issue for us that we find relating to domestic violence. Strangulation has not been defined in the law, which means that you can commit an act of strangulation against a woman or a man And it is very difficult for us in the court of law to prove that a person has been, that the act of strangulation has occurred. So 1371 gives us the ability to actually create a definition as to what strangulation is, and then to include it as a part of a first-degree assault. This is important because very often it's difficult to prove strangulation. It often does not leave a visible mark around the neck, or a mark that goes away very quickly. So this is something that we have found in our work will be very important to us, allow us to do a better job of protecting individuals who have been strangled. And this again has been, the wheels in Annapolis. It has not yet passed. There are two other bills I want to mention. One is to increase the penalty for second-degree murder from 30 years to 40 years. This again is a very important bill. Maryland is unique, and we're one, I believe, of only 5 jurisdictions that does not have a greater penalty for second-degree murder. Now, the reason that this penalty becomes important to us is because the vast majority of our domestic homicides generally are found to be second-degree murder because they are intentional crimes, but not always premeditated. Some of them happen as a result of what you call heat of passion, the depraved heart. An argument ensues. You take a knife. I think about the case of Nathaniel Rogers, who took a knife and stabbed his girlfriend over 90 times, including 40 times in her head. She was a young woman who was pregnant at the time. And after an argument, he stabbed her over 90 times. Found to be second-degree murder because it didn't go in plan this way, which means that with a 30-year sentence, if you get all 30 years and 15 years, he's back next door to you, or eligible to be back out into our community. Very often, we find that the sentence is not adequate. And so we're requesting that the sentence, the maximum penalty, be increased from 30 years to 40 years, and that's another bill. Finally, House Bill 166, we ask for your support on this one as well. Another loophole around sex offenders. What we find with sex offenders is that if you commit a crime in Maryland, and you are a sex offender, registered sex offender, if you come up for bond, a commissioner cannot set a bond for a sex offender. That person must go to a judge to have that determination made because of the seriousness of it. But if you come from another state, or from the District of Columbia, and you're a registered sex offender, you don't have to go in front of a judge. You can just simply go through the commission system because that's a loophole that we have not closed. We want to make sure, again, that a judge will have an opportunity to make that determination regarding a sex offender. And this is Senate Bill 177. We're in Annapolis asking that legislation be passed. And so again, we ask for your support in these pieces of legislation that we believe will help us to do a better job of protecting families and to do more work around family violence. Just want to say a couple of other things as well, because I know that the evening is growing longer. Again, family violence. This is an issue, when we talk about this issue and many others, the truth of it is we do have power to control much of what we see. We've been working, for example, with the faith community over the last couple of years. In fact, we have a training that is scheduled tomorrow morning at Ebenezer AME Church. The faith community has been absolutely wonderful in stepping forward to assist us in our efforts to train pastors. We trained over 100 pastors last year in the faith community to counsel couples and other individuals who come to them in need of help and assistance around domestic violence. Tomorrow is an example of that. Again, at Ebenezer AME Church at 9 a.m. We'll have a good number of pastors and other members of the ministerial staff who will come forward for this comprehensive training that we have been providing to make sure that as the couples, and I agree with Mr. Christopher on this, a good number of these individuals, as I learned, are going to churches asking their pastors for assistance. In fact, a judge called me and said, I want you to know that I've had a lot of people come in front of me who have been injured with visible injuries. And they have come and said, I want to rescind my protection in a protective order hearing. I've been coming to you, I want to rescind my protection because I have a meeting with my pastor on Wednesday. So please do rescind that protection because I'm going to go to my pastor. And what I have said is if they're going to the pastor, then I need to go to the pastor as well. I'm not going to say the way I've been raised, not to go to a pastor, right? We believe in the power of the Lord, but I want to make sure you're trained. So you know how to talk to these people when they come to you. So that's how we came about knowing that they're going to talk to them, so will I. And make sure that we have the training that we need to advise them when they come. I just want to say a couple of other things, and like I said, I will say, we have spent so much time in our office, and I can talk on and on and on about the work we've done. We first focused on violence. How do we stem violence? How do we stem violent repeat offenders? Are we firm enough? What do? We have spent as much time, if not more, figuring out how do we work to make sure these folks never reach us in the first place. This, I believe, is the real work that we have to do. It is not good enough to react, to sit on the other end of it and say, oh gosh, this crime has happened. Once the injury has happened, once the murder has occurred, it is too late. The real work that we must do is figuring out how we get on the front end of it to make sure that we prevent it from happening in the first place. That's why I want to thank so many of you. I could go around and name the folks who have assisted us, Bob Ross included, and others that we've worked with, Young Boys in our Brotherhood Summit, the Sisterhood Summit. We've had the family experience in October. So we'll continue to work on that. But I want to say this last thing. When we talk about what it is we must do, we talk about violence and how we react to violence. I have to be honest with you about the frustration that I have. We talk about it as if we are hopeless. These folks are committing acts of violence because. I can tell you what the because is because I see it every day. And the because is not always because they don't have. Poverty, my parents were born poor. Okay? I've had many of us grew up in poverty, and poverty is not now and never has been an excuse for violent crime. No. Okay? I can tell you what the because is. The because is because our education is inadequate. Our forefathers, and we understand that education was, is, and will always be the key, right, to a successful future. Too many of our children are starting off on an unlevel playing field. And then we wonder how they end up where they do. For example, in Prince George's County, we know as a matter of fact that 65%, and this is an astonishing number, of our children show up in kindergarten unready to learn. What does that mean? That means they give them an assessment when they start in kindergarten. They tell me, I am told by the school system, that only 35% of our children test ready for kindergarten when they show up. What this means is if you start off in this unlevel playing field, you're not ready to learn when you show up. By third grade, if you can't read, this becomes a problem. And if you're not reading by third grade, guess what? By middle school, you have become truant. If you are truant in middle school, by the time you get to high school, you drop out. And it is a fact that 80% of all violent offenders who end up in the courthouse with me have dropped out of high school. Okay? So it is not rocket science what is happening to our children. It's that we're focusing in the wrong places. We must, as a community, and I urge, this body, I have to tell you how impressed I have been as I sat here and thought, oh my gosh, wow, the answers are in this room. If we urge in any place, the true civil rights issue of our day is education. Yep. It is how our children... People say to us, well, you should wait, we're getting better. Not better, faster. Obviously. Because again, if you want to know why the lives, the pipeline from schools to prison is real. And we have the ability, I believe, as a community to insist that our children receive top-notch educations and that they be given the opportunity thereby to become the kind of people that they should be. I believe that is one of the areas we have to focus on. Again, I can talk and talk and talk, but I see it every day. I'm not confused by what I see. It is education and it is family. Education and family. And that's the reason we have to focus together on those two areas. How do we support families, women and men who are working every day, doing their level best to provide for their families? But it is difficult. Child care is hard to afford. It is. And so when I saw 5 babies who've been killed by their mother's boyfriends, they said to me, well, the women are awful, wretched women. I said, no, they're working women. Many of them who are doing the best they can. They leave these children home very often. They think they're in safe places and they're not. It is incumbent upon us to make sure that that is not the option. That there is safe child care for children, that the mothers and fathers can work to provide for them, supporting families and making sure they're educated. And I believe, again, that the best is yet to come, that we should not feel hopeless, that we really can look forward to a brighter day. So thank you again for the time. Thank you again for letting me serve you. Again, this is a dream come true to wake up in my community and serve every day. And the middle woman is pretty hot.
I'm going to ask all the presenters to stay around. just for a little while at least, so for our mix and mingle, so you can answer questions and things of that nature. But we've got to move on. We do support House Bill 825. We did send in our letter in support